Now, everybody listening to this podcast episode, I know what you're thinking. I know what you need. And I know that you are very, very hungry to understand how you can optimize and leverage video. Let's face it, we are all in this same boat. If we're in marketing, communications, business development, if we're an entrepreneur, business owner, etc., we all want to harness the power of video. So I have a treat for you on this particular episode because I have Mr. Matt Hughes, who is king of video. Welcome to the podcast, Matt.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
That's a big kind of accolade, king of video. So we're expecting big deep dives here. We're expecting some real little nuggets of gold. And, you know, I know that having watched a lot of your videos that we're talking here very, very current. And I would describe this as very much best practice in terms of kind of harnessing video, because we all know it's a big opportunity, but I think there's only very few people who are really, really leveraging it for their business. And so I want to make this a very, very practical kind of conversation. We'll keep it super informal, but also I think, you know, try if we can and give a lot of value in terms of sort of practical tips and what people can do. And I also want to showcase your community, because I know you're very keen to encourage people to engage on the longer term on this journey of the power of video. So for you, Matt, where did it all start? Because I know from a sort of an IT background, you know, you come at this from, I guess, a more sort of technical spin, but you must have realized the power of video. It must have been coming through, I guess, loud and clear as you were doing your work.
I mean, I wish it was that I was that good at predicting the future, but actually it was not like that at all. My friend of mine had just finished university doing I think it was like a media production degree or something like that, and I happened to have built his website for him for his degree. I'm sure he didn't tell the professor about that, but I said to him, "What are you doing now?" And he said, "Oh, well, I'm just looking for a job in Tesco or somewhere like that." And I was like, "No, we can't be doing that. Like, you know, you've done this media production degree. Let's start a video company." So it was literally that kind of quicker conversation. And I was a contractor at the time. I was earning good money. And, you know, when you earn good money, you don't really know what to do with it. You want to put it in good places. And it just sounded like a really fun thing to do, which was different to the, you know, the techie stuff that I was doing. I mean, there's lots of technical aspects to video, but yeah, it just sounded like something that was creative. I was getting married at the time, so I thought maybe we could make a wedding video for us. And it just kind of escalated from there, really.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, how people kind of either really choreograph the journey and really feel like, you know, they know the destiny, they know kind of all the things that they're good at and that the world needs, and it kind of all just beautifully with serendipity comes together. And then other people who just kind of find, I mean, I found my way into marketing in a similar kind of way. I sort of fell into it. I mean, this is decades ago now, but I fell into it not realizing that actually this was my calling. I guess from, you know, having watched your work and listened to the passion with which, you know, you kind of evangelize the whole power of video, you must have realized very, very quickly that this was your thing, that this was kind of meant to be.
Yeah, totally. So I started IT, and I think that was the choreographed version that you talked about. You know, I was building computers when I was 10, building websites when I was 15, and I just knew that that was the route that I wanted to go down. And I think when I discovered video, it really made me question that. You know, I think there's an idea that people have 2 or 3 careers in their lives, and I think this was just the second one for me, really. And I think when I first got into IT and I was building websites, I remember like the excitement and the hunger of developing websites and doing coding and all that kind of stuff. And when I got into video, all of a sudden I had like apertures and ISOs and warm lighting, cold lighting, and all this tech. Like I've got some wireless lights now, and it kind of all merged into like, I can be creative. I can create these beautiful videos. We can get it out into the social media world, and that kind of satisfies my desire to be an influencer and help people on that sort of level, really. And so, yeah, I think it just slowly morphed into that thing. And what happened, I don't know if you saw this from any of my content before, but in 2018, the guy I built the business with, he left and took all my customers with him. And when you go through that kind of process, I kind of sat down and said, like, what do I really love about what I'm doing IT wise and video wise? And I knew the two things that I really loved were training and video. And so that's where I decided, okay, that's the thing I should focus on. And I have done since then. That was just prior to creating the King of Video brand as well.
There's a real relevance with what you say there, because I guess a lot of the time, people think of, okay, if I'm in business, if I'm a marketer, it is all about the conversion. It's all about getting somebody on board with your brand, engaging, and then getting a call to action there so you can convert them from a prospect into a customer. It's the basis of selling. It's the basis of growing a business. But a lot of the, I guess, social networks, and we're going to come on to talking now deeply about YouTube in just a minute. A lot of the social networks, LinkedIn, really good example here. Allegedly, because none of us really know, but allegedly, a lot of the powers that be are saying that the algorithms are changing now, and they're really rewarding training, learning, development, education more than they are the overt sell. And I think, probably what you're suggesting here is that the big key to all of this, when you're producing, well, video predominantly here, but any kind of content, it's the value added element. It isn't just purely, right, I want to sell you something, here's the features and benefits of my offer, my service, and my product. You want to buy, don't you? Click the link here to subscribe, or click the link here to purchase. I think it is what we're saying, because I'm certainly seeing this come through as a trend, that you build the relationship through the value add, the education, the informing, and this probably is the value that you're bringing, I guess, to the video world. But first, before you can really get that confidence in the audience or the listener or the viewer to be able to do that action, is that kind of where you're headed with this?
Well, I think as a personality type thing, that it's a bit of a strange one, because I know people that are fully focused on the funnel building, the conversions, all the things you sort of said was like a precursor to this relationship building style thing. But for me, it is all about the people. In my IT world, I ran a user group community all around the UK. I traveled with that community around the world. Like, it was always about people. And so when I've transitioned to video, it's still always about people. So I don't want to say it's a trend thing. I think it's just a personality type. I think if you're the kind of person that cares about people, that cares about the effect and impact it has on their daily lives, whether they're business or not business, then you care about the value you provide them as you're creating content. I think if you're very results driven, you're very high D on disc profiling or something like that, like, all you care about is the result and getting the money in the bank. And of course, I care about those things. I love money, like most people do if they're running a business, But I also love giving value and helping people create impact in their own businesses. And for me, the biggest impact you can create is being on a video and teaching something to someone or helping them move from A to B.
That word impact, I mean, that's really hit me hard in terms of this conversation, because I think, a lot of people who are really evangelizing power of video, everybody from Gary V at the big sort of macro level down to little old me.
Pro marketers,
we often talk about, impact as being the thing, because unless you can make that impact, there's so much noise out there. You look at the reels, you look at, short form video, all the way through to real long form educational pieces, all the way through to, your Joe Rogan sort of 3-hour, dialogues and stuff. There's a lot of stuff out there. There's a huge amount of noise, isn't there? So I think, how would you suggest, I mean, let's move into the whole kind of YouTube space, because I know that's obviously a real focal point for your work. How would you say that impact, kind of, how do you begin with the impact thing? Is it through a thumbnail? Is it through some very clever kind of overlays on your text? What is it? What is that initial kind of hook?
I think it's focusing on the macro, really. Like, a lot of people think, I want to become viral. In order for me to create great impact in the world, I have to have 1 million subscribers. I have to get in front of 1 million different eyeballs, like, they're so focused on this big picture that they forget the macro, and that is the one person that's watching your video at that moment in time. You know, unless there's a watch party going on with YouTube, and sometimes there is in my house, you know, it's me, my wife, and my two girls, and we're all watching YouTube at the same time. But outside of that, generally speaking, it's a viewer of one. And so I really want anybody listening to this to think about what's the impact you could have on one person, and how could you create your content to help that one person? Because, you know, we know about the power of six, and, you know, you go for one person before, you know, you've met everyone in the world. Well, why could that not start at that one person? So don't think too big, and don't think you need loads of subscribers and loads of eyeballs. You just need to be really good for that one person and focus on that person first before, you know, all the cool stuff of overlays. You know, you talk about all those good things that YouTube offers, but what could you do for that one viewer? Always focus on the viewer.
I love that. I certainly resonate with that, Matt. I mean, completely. I think, you know, that's how, you know, this podcast for me has really evolved, both in the UK and the US. And I've been really surprised that people say, oh, no, I saw that episode from, you know, 2020 when you did such and such. I'm thinking, really? I had no idea, you know, and I've not engaged with this person before, and we're not connected on any of the socials. And I'm thinking, what, really? Has I kind of reached that far? And but it is down to that kind of one-to-one thing, and they might have passed it on to a friend or something like that. And that's how this, obviously, you know, definition of viral is that it, you know, it does spread in that kind of organic way, but it feels more kind of pure, you know, just really attending to that one pair of eyeballs that are watching that video. And just kind of really stepping into their shoes, isn't it, really?
Yeah, and stepping in his shoes, that's a good point for a podcast. But, you know, like for me, I think you don't get to decide where they come into your world. Like, that's not, as much as we think that we're clever marketers and we're putting content out every day, and so they will come in at the top of our funnel and they'll find their way down to the bottom or whatever it might be. Like, you just don't get to decide that. So that point you made about the 2020 podcast is massively important, because actually that's where somebody could find you. And YouTube and podcasts are the best examples of creating an asset library of content, of great content that lives with you forever. Even if it's bad sometimes, my best bit of content is my worst bit of content, of course it is. But you don't get to decide when they come into your world. And so if you just focus on the viewer, focus on the value that you're giving them at that moment in time. Yes, some of it's not evergreen, and it does die with trends. I've got a video about Clubhouse, so there's a great example of a trend dying. But if you focus on those that stuff, then actually the person that's listening, and you mentioned shoes, and that's why I picked up on that, because it's the person walking. I listen to podcasts when I walk, and so think about those people and how they're getting that value wherever they are in the world as they consume your content.
So it's interesting you talk about video as being something sort of very closely aligned to podcast. Obviously, you know, podcast with Spotify, etc., can be video or audio. But do you see a kind of a real blend between these? Because I guess we're talking here a very different thing between, say, short form video, which is, you know, very much high impact, just got to get the eyeballs, get that attention, then off to somewhere else, versus a longer form kind of piece of content where, you know, you're almost a little bit like this. You're kind of immersing yourself into the storytelling and the narrative. You know, do you see kind of almost like YouTube videos in their long form format being very much consumed like podcasts, where, you know, you can take them with you? You might just go for the audio, even though you've got the video playing, you're actually listening to it in the car, for example. Do you see evidence of that happening?
Yeah, well, I mean, you only have to look at how YouTube have prioritized that, right? So Spotify did a big thing by purchasing some big podcasts, right? They said, hey, we've got this streaming platform, we're going to prioritize podcasts in there as well. And then YouTube did the same thing. They said, hold on a minute, we've got all these podcasters that are filming their podcasts and putting them on YouTube. Why don't we create an area specifically for podcasts? So when you go on YouTube now, you can see in the tabs that podcast sits there in a really nice way, easily accessible way as well. So of course, I think there's a place for it. And actually, what I try to tell people that podcasting is like you creating this short form content. I know so many. I did a podcast last week where she said, "Oh, Matt, don't worry, no one's going to see it; they'll only hear it." And I was like, "Oh my god!" it's like death to me. That was. I was like, "Why are they not going to see it?" Oh, well, we don't have time to edit it. And I was like, "Look, nobody needs perfection when you're editing these things. Just you're missing an opportunity for those people like me that prefer to watch something over listening." And is it there's three kind of learners. There's audible, visual, and kinesthetic. Is that the one that practical people? Like, so if you think about those style of learners, why would you miss out on the visual ones and not give them the opportunity to sit and watch and listen? You know, you talked about listening to my content, Neil, and I when I listened to yours, I was like, oh, I wish I had a voice like Neil's. Very, very calming voice. I'm a little bit more of a working class Englishman compared to you, but it's still those things, the visual and the audio aspect just work perfectly on YouTube. Why would you just put it on Spotify and leave it there? I'm not saying it's a bad thing. You know, you've got huge potential reach on the podcast platforms, but for me, utilizing the second biggest search engine in the world, arguably, TikTok might have something to say about that, means that you've got a good opportunity for more reach, and that's what we need.
So business owner, marketer, entrepreneur, startup, you know, there's a lot of people of that kind of nature listening and watching this, and it probably is a balance between listening and watching.
Yeah.
You talked a little bit about asset library, and I quite like that, a whole kind of range of, almost like you're building an archive that's going to go with you as a business for however long you're in business. Yeah. Where does somebody begin that? I mean, you've said about kind of understanding the customer, thinking about that one-to-one relationship you're looking to forge. Where do they then start? Because I know a lot of your work is about building confidence in the person who thinks, yeah, we've got to go onto YouTube, got to get some videos out there. And they now hear that, okay, I've got to build this asset library. What do I then do? I know my customer, I've built this kind of persona profile, so I know who they are, but I've got to begin building this asset library. What does that really mean in practical terms? Could you give them a little bit of an insight as to the practicality of what that is?
Yeah. So, I mean, this works really well for me because every person that comes into my world, whether they're in my membership or in my bootcamp or accelerated programs, I always get them to do the same thing for the first part of it. So if you want to save yourself some money, here it is right now. And that is just to think about the most common, people will call it frequently asked questions, right? Think about those things that people ask you the most often that can save you some time. If you had a video, you could send them. So I have a video now called Facebook Live Sideways. It's the one that I hate the most on my channel. And the reason why I had that video is about 90 seconds long. And it was the video I created before I had a channel, before I even decided I wanted to do YouTube. I just kept getting asked, how do I stop my Facebook Lives being sideways? And what it is people start it in portrait mode and then they rotate the phone and they end up sideways on Facebook. And I got asked this over and over again. I was like, I'm so fed up of answering this question. So I'm just going to create a video and show them the exact steps that prevent this from happening, right? And of course, it became my biggest hit on my channel. Lockdown helped that, you know, because of the fact that everybody suddenly had to go online and they didn't know what they were doing really. But for you guys in your own businesses, just think about what is it that people ask me the most. And then once you've got a list, and you should be able to create a list of like 20, 30 of those titles really, then just pick the first 10 or 12. If you did 12 and you publish one of them every week for, you'd have 3 months worth of content basically. And then you could just send people to them. Like imagine if you're thinking about working someone, let's say you were doing some research. I'm doing some research and I'm looking for an electrician, right? And I've got all these electricians and I don't know who to trust. I feel like all the electricians, they kill me with all this technical malarkey and I really don't know who to choose. Some of them have got these testimonials. But then one of them sent me a YouTube channel of them talking about their work. So I see them, I hear them, I can understand what it's like to be around them because I hear the way they're talking to their customers. Maybe they've got a video testimonial. Like all of a sudden, I'm starting to build trust from that person. I see that I'm starting to see them as an authority because they've taken a bit of time to create this great content. And then I feel like, okay, I could make an inquiry with this person now. Like that applies to every business. Electrician is just one example.
I know one of the words that you've been using sort of really regularly quite recently is the word simplicity,
Yeah.
keeping things simple. So with that in mind, so they've got their top 12 things, they're answering that question, they're adding some real value by doing that, drip feeding that content out into their channel, once a week. So we're not talking huge overload here, we're talking something that's really simple but very, very practical.
Yeah.
Is kind of, because that what I would term that, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but that to me, that would be short form video. So whether you call it YouTube Shorts or whatever, it's kind of it's short, isn't it? Short duration.
No,
So
no,
we're
it
not
doesn't have
talking
to be.
overkill here, are we?
No, no, it doesn't have to be short form. I mean, it really depends on how. It's a tough one because making video, in my experience, for a lot of people in a lot of different industries, and I've dealt with almost everything I can think of now. When you're getting started, it's difficult. It's difficult to understand what to say. It's difficult to understand how to edit it, how to put it all together. But the biggest thing that gets people over that is just getting started, right? And so there's two ways to do it. You can do short form content and do a minute. And I encourage people to do that because I'm like, look, you can do a minute. It's dead easy. If you go wrong, it's no big deal because it's just a minute. And so we have like a shorts challenge, a 30-day shorts challenge that goes through that process. Or you can do the long form content and explain your expertise. And when I say long form, that could just be 4 minutes or 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be like half an hour or a podcast or something like that. It can be a longer piece of content. But when I'm strategically talking about one video a week, I'm specifically talking about long form content. So if you're doing a 30-day shorts challenge, 1 minute video, then I would do that every day for 30 days. If I'm doing long form content, I would do that once a week. Still sort of minimum 5 minutes, really. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, there's a nice kind of, I can see people now just in my mind's eye writing that down and thinking, right, okay, now I know the balance. And it feels, because I think there's a lot of expectation that, oh my goodness, this is going to take over my life. I'm going to not be able to do my job or run my business if I'm doing all this video stuff. But that feels super practical. That doesn't feel something that is just going to consume. I mean, would you recommend that people do this kind of almost on as a block of stuff, like in one evening, or maybe take one day out to kind of create this and then drip feed it? I mean, how do you find that your sort of community kind of responds to that? Do they do it kind of literally drip fed, or would they be, building this asset library en masse and then having a bit of time off?
Yeah, so there's benefits to doing both. What I recommend people do is, for long form content, for your month's worth of content, you film it in batches of 4. So 4 to 5, there's 13 weeks and a quarter, so it makes it 4 to 5. But I say film 4 to 5 on a Saturday morning or something, whatever your downtime, good day for you is. And there's loads to talk about that with your energy levels. For me, it's in the morning, Saturday morning. I don't have work, I don't have meetings. I can just focus on my content time. But that's for long form content. But on your short form content, it could just be something you do every day. Like for me, I've had 3 meetings today, and on one of those meetings, I wrote them down here. For those of you on the podcast, you won't see it, but I've got a little sticky post-it note here, and it just has 4 questions that somebody asked me. 4 simple questions that I can answer in a 1-minute video. That's 4 videos basically. So I could just stand there. I could, I recommend that people have something where they could be hands-free. So a tripod, or I've got a ring light behind me that's got a phone holder on it. And I would stand there, I would hit record and just answer that one question, and then stop it, start again, answer the next one. And then I've got 4 pieces of content which I can take and post every day for the next 4 days. Now, if you do that every time you have an interaction with a client where you're answering questions, like before you know it, you've got 100 pieces of content sitting on your phone. I don't think people appreciate how much knowledge they have about their subject matter and how how much they take for granted that they know about that particular subject. It's
And
huge.
they're
Like,
kind of, yeah, I was going to say therein lies, one of those really untapped things. It's confidence again, isn't it? I know you talk a lot about confidence, but it
yeah,
is having that confidence to just do it, isn't it? And just kind of respect that, it's not about ego. You're not showing off by doing this. This is all about sharing and adding value, isn't it? And I think a lot of people, particularly us Brits, almost shy away from that because it's like, oh, well, I can't be bragging. But actually, that is what your customer wants, isn't it?
yeah. Well, I mean, what I'd ask you to do then is think about a subject that you have absolutely zero knowledge on. Think about any kind of subject that you can think of now. And like for me, I can tell you, I can open a computer, I can look in it, look in it, and tell you every part of that computer, the insides of a computer. I could build it, I could take it apart, rebuild it, all that kind of stuff. It's much easier now than it used to be, for sure, because it's largely color coded. It's like Lego. But if I open my car bonnet, I would be completely lost. I know where to put the water. I'm still concerned that one day I'm going to put the water where the oil is, because I'm not quite sure. There's pictures on there, but it's not my thing. I don't do mechanics. I don't do cars. I choose a car by setting a budget and just giving it to a guy who comes back with some options for me. Like, that's not my thing. But for some people, it is everything. They know every little thing. And they look at this stuff and go, yeah, I know exactly how to do that. My brother-in-law, he builds stuff in his house. He'll build like furniture for his house. He'll get crates and break up all the crates and make tables and stuff, right? I just don't even know where to start with that stuff. It's not in my wheelhouse at all. It just doesn't exist. So the reason I'm saying that is because when you are doing your stuff, when I want you to think about something that other people don't know, that you don't know about other subjects, right, it's the same that you need to get over to other people. So if I'm starting and I think, I can't really talk about microphones, because everybody knows you should have a microphone when you're filming your videos. And then I'll listen to somebody's video and I can hear that it's just the onboard microphone. And I'm like, why did they not use an external microphone? Or I'll watch a video and there's no light and I'm like, why didn't they just use a light? Or the best one, my favorite one, is they've not cleaned their lens. I say it once a month. I put it a Facebook status once a month for the last 3 years. I've put the same status, clean your lens. It's a running joke now with some of the people in my audience because somebody hasn't heard it. And so if you think about your subject matter, every single part of that, somebody is new to that and they're going, oh my God, if somebody had just told me. I saw a picture of when you open your car, when you go to fill your car up, there's like a little hook on the door that opens to fill your tank, and you can put your what do you call it? The cap, the fuel cap.
Yes, cap.
You can hang it right on there. I've been driving for almost 20 years, didn't know. Saw this video about it the other day, and I was like, oh my God. Oh my God, why did nobody tell? Well, the petrol thing has the arrow where the petrol, to fill it up is just stuff like that blows my mind. But for a lot of people, it's just normal. It's just common knowledge. You've got to share that.
So it's tapping into what's different. Yeah. So kind of if you really know this target audience, and I see a lot of, a lot of people saying about it's all about the niche or niche, depends how you pronounce it. But for me, that niche thing is really important, because then you can really, as we said earlier, step into their shoes and really understand what their pain points are.
Yeah.
Get those post-its out, keep a record of all those encounters, and then, as Matt says, make sure that then you're answering them. That's really, really sage advice. What's your view then of AI in terms of content generation? Because a lot of people are talking about almost relying on AI to come up with the next kind of content, trending content, and that kind of thing. Did you feel that's taking away from this human sort of approach that you've been talking about earlier?
It's a great question. I spent some time with AI yesterday, as though it's a person. I spent some time with AI, and what I asked for was I wanted to create some short form content, right? And this is my idea generation process. And I was like, okay, I've got this list of stuff in my Notion. I use Notion as a document note-taking app. And so I said to AI, I was like, give me 30 pieces of content, short form content for YouTube that I can give. And I gave it loads of information about who I am, what I do. Great thing you can do is you can say, I'm going to ask you for 30 pieces of content. Ask me the questions that you need to know about my business to give me a good suggestions. And it'll ask you like 10 questions, which is amazing. So I've now got that pre-prep. So I filled that in there. So give me 30 suggestions. And it just spat them out so quickly. And what it did is it gave me the titles for each of the things I could talk about. Now, I didn't need any more information from AI to talk about those things. But in order for me to sit here and think about those 30 would have took me ages. And some of them were not appropriate. You know, some of them I wouldn't have talked about. They were really niche topics in that particular, in the YouTube space. So I just wouldn't have talked about them. But it just helped me create these ideas quicker. And then I was like, oh, you know, one of them I said, oh, I like this idea. Can you give me a script? And it gave me a script with timings on it. And I was like, look, take the timings off. I don't need timings. You know, you can really dig deep into creating all of this stuff that potentially would have taken you a lot of time, a lot of perfectionism to get over, a lot of imposter syndrome to get over, all the things that stop you recording in the first place. AI can just remove that because the emotions don't exist. It doesn't care that, you know, that topic's been covered by my competitor down the road 2 weeks ago. Maybe I shouldn't do it now because they've done it once and it's already been done and everybody's already seen this information. Like, it just tells you this is what people need to know. Why would you not use it? Do you use it, Neil?
I do. I mean, certainly for if it's a topic I know really intimately because I've been doing it for years. If I'm producing a webinar, for example, then I'll just go with gut because I know the topic. But if it is one that I'm a little bit kind of uncertain about, or it's a more of a tutorial style where I think actually I need probably a little bit more structure, because if I just go from sort of base knowledge, then I will be missing things. One, because of memory, because I'm super old now, but two, because actually there might be some stuff that just because of the sectors that I've worked in or whatever, I've missed something that could be relevant elsewhere. So I'll use it to kind of double check, and I'll put in, okay, this is what I'm thinking. What do you think? And then, yeah, very much use it. I heard somebody the other day say using ChatGPT as an uneducated intern. So it's almost like they don't know anything, but you're just using them to do your kind of base research. But occasionally I'll actually use them as a bit more of an assistant. So kind of almost sort of put my half-baked idea to ChatGPT and say, what do you think so far? What am I missing? And as you say, because we've had these conversations so many times now, I feel like it really does understand what I need. And so I think there's a place for it. I'd agree with you. I think there is a place for it. And I think, yeah, for me, it's webinars. I don't tend to prep interviews like this. These tend to just be more free flow, which is lovely now. But if it's, yeah, something a bit more of a tutorial base, then I'll probably get it double checked and just use it as my sort of sounding board. So I personally think there is a part for it to play, but it's only a part. I wouldn't ever want to rely on it because it would be missing the essence of me. And that to me is the value that I'm adding, is how I'm different as a human being versus people who also do what I do. So yeah, it's kind of is a balance, I think. But yeah, just interested in your take there, because obviously it could be all consuming. I was looking at one channel yesterday that was completely and utterly AI generated. So they use it to generate the video. It's all automated. They're using talking heads, which are all animated AIs. The scripts are all created by AI. You think, well, what's the point? You know, I just mean,
to me, it feels like, you know, when you're watching a video like that, and I absolutely, in short form content, I've watched stuff and contributed to the success of that video by watching it, and I know it's AI. So, you know, I can see how some people winning from that. But again, if we go back to the start of the conversation, like, it's what impact do you want? Do you want the impact of being a faceless channel? And there's lots of good, successful faceless channels. I'm not knocking them. Or do you want to have a personal impact in the world? Like, I don't think I don't think you're going to get that by relying solely on AI, personally speaking. I like the idea of an assistant. I think assistant is a great way to describe it. And that's not to say that even like VAs and stuff will disappear. I think there's still space for executive assistants and people that are going to save you time in that way. But you know, one great way that I've been using it is I've been creating content, written content, and I'd say my written content's all right, but it's not amazing. But I've been putting that into GPT and saying, add emojis, because I always can't decide which emojis to add. And I've been saying, make it more exciting. And to see AI take my relatively average, you know, text and make it more exciting is just a wonderful thing. It just takes away that like lag of what can I do about this piece of content to make it more exciting. It just instantly gives you the answer, which is great.
Yeah, it is. And I think anything that kind of, if this isn't part of somebody listening to this, if this is an element of how they're going to market their business rather than it being their business, I think that efficiency is obviously, you know, such a benefit. So yeah, I think we're both in agreement. There's a good thing there. What about live? I know that you're obviously an advocate of live because you do live and you love live and you're very good at live. What about live for a business owner? Do you think there's something there that they need to be building confidence to a level where it needs to be live, or is that something just for the chosen few?
Live content still gets great reach. And the great thing about YouTube is your live content will stay forever as an asset like anything else. I used to think, you know, live content was quite niche. It just wouldn't work in certain industries. But I've got a client who I tell him all the time because he shows up we have weekly calls on Fridays. I tell him I talk about him all the time because he works in the pharmaceutical industry and he did these, I want to say like live shows. And he's absolutely killed it on his channel. He says he gets inbound inquiries all the time and they always say to him, I've watched your YouTube videos. And to me, I look at them and they just look boring as hell because I'm like, it's all pharmaceutical nonsense. Like, I don't know what he's talking about. He's talking about all sorts of corporate terminology I don't understand. But of course, this topic that he's talking about live is perfect for those people in those roles. And so I think if you've got the confidence to get started on live, why would you not give it a go? Why would you not add that to the tool set of things that you can do on your channel? Again, you can create a playlist for that stuff. You can really separate it from everything else that you're doing, or integrate it if you want to. So it's just a decision of what to do. You know, some people will like the fact that they can say, right, I'm going to block out every Friday at 12:30. I'm going to go live. That's in my diary. It will never get changed. So I'll do it. Other people like the flexibility of being able to say, you know, on Saturday, I'm going to create my content, but I might not edit it for a week. It might take a bit of time. Podcasts like this, if you're not doing it live, you can take a bit of time to edit it and publish it on your own schedule. So really depends on what you feel is the best way forward. But I love live video. I think it's great.
Yeah, and it's fun. It kind of gets you to a point where you know you have to be on point because by definition it's live. So, you know, you're really focused in. You're totally thinking about the audience. You're just dialed in, aren't you? And as you say, you know, it goes into the asset library. I mean, we've added a lot of kind of ideas, a lot of thinking. I really appreciate, you know, your views on all of these topics, Matt, because you know, it's always good to get, you know, sort of expert view on these things. Your channel itself, you know, you've got a lot of examples of, you know, how-to guides. There's live there, there's shorts, there's, you know, a whole host of things on the King of Video channel here. In terms of building the community, because clearly, you know, you are about community, you are a people person, as you say, and, you know, you want to obviously, you know, help people to understand and engage and collaborate with others going through similar kinds of journeys. How do people kind of, obviously, apart from just purely watching the videos, how do they kind of become part of this journey and part of the community with you?
So we've got a Facebook group on Facebook called YouTube for Business. Largely, my YouTube stuff is for business, right? We've got a few people that do it for consumers, but largely YouTube for Business. We've got a membership community, which is a private community, a paid community where we do the calls on the Fridays I talked about. We're starting a UK YouTube community very, very soon. We're just sort of planning that out to make sure that we can consistently build that. I'm looking for a space as well to host those meetings. So there's all these kind of things that I'm trying to do together to help foster a good environment. What I found, I've been to a couple of YouTube conferences, but they're in LA, and you know it's great going to LA. I'm not knocking that. You know, I'm very fortunate to be able to do that. But there's nothing really in the UK or Europe. Really, I don't feel like that's the case. So what I want to try and do is create some kind of community around it. And, you know, YouTubers come in all sorts of shapes and sizes and have all sorts of weird and wonderful niches and industries that they talk about. And I want to bring those people together and share and collaborate across those different industries so that we can learn, like, why is vlogging a good idea for one person, but how to and tutorials are good for someone else? Like, what can we learn about how we've promoted our channels in those different industries? All of that stuff can be part of a community, and I still think face-to-face is a good way to do that, as much as doing stuff online as well. So we're going to try and make sure the UK YouTube community at least is face-to-face as well.
Wonderful. Well, this sounds a very timely thing for everyone listening or watching this, because you know you could potentially be part of this this new community. So how should people contact and connect with you?
So the best place is, obviously, I've got the King of Video website, kingofvideo.co.uk, and then if you want to get quick access to some of my stuff, then you can go to links.kingofvideo.co.uk.
Wonderful. That's great. And so let's leave everybody with a final top tip. Matt Hughes's top tip of the day regarding video. I know I'm putting you on the spot because I didn't say I'd want a top tip at the end here, but I'm just going to give you a moment to pause and think about that. If somebody, again, brand new to this, they know video is good for their business potentially, what's the top tip? Probably where should they begin? What's the very first thing they should do?
Okay, so my top tip for you is, and as cliche as it sounds, is to get started. Now, I've had people come in my community that have sat in there for 3-4 months and they've not launched their community at their channel. And I sit there and I'm trying to motivate them all the time. But the fact of the matter is, Mr. B says it takes 100 videos. I'm sure he said 200 actually, but let's go with 100 bad videos before you start creating good ones. So you may as well start now putting out the bad ones so that you can get to the good ones, right? Like, getting started is the most important thing. You'll learn so much from opening the creative juices and letting that flow, and then you'll start learning that when you create videos, when you start editing them, you need to create them in a different way, and that will start impacting how you create the videos. And then someone will say, oh, it'd be great if you could do this, and that'll impact it. But if you never start, no one will ever see your videos. That's it. So you may as well get started anyway.
I love that. Get your first 100 rubbish videos out of the way as quick as you can.
I'd like to think we could do it quicker than 100.
To go and do it.
Yeah. I say to people, like, I like Mr. Beast's advice, but the way we strategically do it doesn't need to take 100 bad ones. You know, you can do it in like 10. Yeah. Or maybe you don't need bad ones at all. Maybe you could just strategically do it and start doing good ones from the start. But there's so much. It's just about the learning process. There's so much in it when you get started that, you know, before you know it. And I'm sure it's the same with you, Neil, with your podcast. You know, you said something and it was subtle that you said, but you said, I don't really need to prep as much anymore. And it felt to me like at the start you were probably like super planning, and you know you had to, every little detail was planned, and now it's like, okay, actually don't need to go to that amount of effort. It's not that you don't care anymore about it, but it's just more that you learn over time that I'm more comfortable to just show up, have a bit of knowledge, do a little bit of research, and just ask the questions and let the conversation flow, and that's okay. And that is pure professionalism, because when you start, you're just not quite prepared and you don't quite understand how it's going to work out. And then eventually, and what you see on YouTubers' channels is you know, their year 3 or year 4 or year 5 of their channel, like, oh my God, this is so well produced. And it's like, go back to day 1, mate, see how that looks and see if it's the same. And 9 times out of 10, it's not.
It's so true. And if you don't believe us, go look at it. Go look at your favorite YouTube channel and go back to video 1, because I will guarantee you, and this is one thing that Gary Vee always talks about, is you go and see some of my earlier videos and they're embarrassing. They are so bad. And yet now, of course, you know, world domination. Matt, this has been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I mean, it's been so helpful. And yeah, it's just made me want to go and do a little bit more frequently answered questions, which I feel like I should be doing more of. So I'm going to get my Post-its out and start to, yeah, answer a few more questions. That is so valuable. Thank you so much for your time today, Matt.
Good. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for listening.